Back here on HQ, man, the Chiefs, as of right now, they're on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff picture. But hey, they're 4-1 since starting 0-2 to start this season. And it feels like everything is clicking. Mahomes and company, fresh off a huge win over the Raiders. Mahomes has his receivers back. The offense looks dynamic, like everything is clicking. And how about the defense? They also came up big in that shutout win over Las Vegas. So sitting at 4-3, you see it here in terms of the division, the AFC West standings, still chasing the Broncos to get to the top of the AFC West. The Broncos, by the way, pure cinema against the Giants. We thought when Jackson Dart had that 1-yard touchdown with 37 seconds left that it was a done deal, but it surely wasn't. So we got to talk about the Chiefs, what they have to do to get back into the playoff picture, and really if they want to get back into winning the division. So 5 moves they need to make at the trade deadline. So for that, let's welcome in Mike Renner and JP Acosta. Guys, let's get to it. JP, first up, we're talking about the Chiefs and their need to trade for an edge in Will McDonald. So what would that look like realistically?
I think for Will McDonald and the Chiefs, what really would make sense for McDonald and Kansas City is the fact that he provides a different element of pass rusher for Kansas City. Kansas City has a lot of power guys going to try and run through you with a bull rush. Will McDonald wins in a different way, and I feel like the Jets are sort of in this area where they need to try and recoup as many draft picks, as many assets as possible. Will McDonald is still going to be under contract for 2.5 years. He's coming off of a really good year last season. He started off pretty slow this year, but in terms of somebody who can get some really good pass rush numbers and get some pop for this team, especially on the edge, I think this would make a lot of sense for Kansas City.
See, to me, the price tag, I think, is going to be just a little too high for Kansas City to make a move like this at the deadline. He's a former first rounder. He had 10.5 sacks last year, and it would probably cost somewhere in the neighborhood of a second, just given the production this guy's already had. And also, he's only a part-time player for you. He's not going to be starting for the Kansas City Chiefs. He really shouldn't even be starting for the New York Jets right now. The guy cannot play against the run. And I think for the Chiefs, they really don't love that mold of edge defenders. Steve Spagnuolo, over the course of his career, has not trended towards the undersized guys. So this one would be a little surprising to me, but he would be a massive upgrade in terms of just pure pass rushing juice off the edge.
And you know what, with the way that Miami season is going, it really feels like it's going to be a fire sale down there in Miami. So let's get to a guy, another edge there in Jaelan Phillips, someone that the Chiefs could use. In your eyes, JP, so what would that look like in terms of a trade there if they want to get him?
I think if you want to get Jaelan Phillips, the first thing you have to understand is that he is going to deal with a lot of injury problems. It's been a litany of injuries for him ever since entering the league, even before he entered the league. But because he's still fairly young, because he is still one of the better pass rush winners for Miami, it feels like they are going to have to start and looking at trade assets moving forward into the future. So I think a guy like Jaelan Phillips can really help in a sort of similar way to Will McDonald in terms of winning with speed, winning with hand usage and technique, instead of just going straight speed to power. But I do think some of the injury history and the fact that he's going to be an upcoming free agent might scare Kansas City off a little bit. But if you just want a 1-year rental, see if you can get some more pass rush in your chase for a title, I think Jaelan Phillips makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, to me, this is the guy I want if I'm Kansas City. He fits their mold, right? He's 6'5", 262. He's a bigger edge rusher, and he's been productive this season. Just Miami really hasn't given him the opportunity because they haven't played with a lot of leads. But 22 pressures this season, and he, like I said, fits the mold and wouldn't come too expensive. I think that's the other thing. I said a second probably for Will McDonald. This could be like a late third or even like a fourth. Could he get it done for a guy like Jaelan Phillips because of that injury history, because he's torn his ACL and his Achilles each of the last 2 seasons. But despite those injuries, the guy's still playing ball and would be a big upgrade for the Chiefs.
All right, next up, JP, we're talking about D tackle Shelby Harris. So how do they make that happen there in KC?
I think Cleveland is in another spot where not only do they need to start acquiring assets to move forward in 2026, but their defensive line is absolutely loaded. When they get Mike Hall back, there are going to be a lot of reps that are going to be taken up by his return, and Shelby Harris is going to find himself on the odd man out. I think you're going to have that rotation of Mike Hall, Mason Graham, and Malik Collins, and then the old man in Shelby Harris does find himself on the other side of that. But what Shelby Harris brings to Kansas City potentially is just a guy who creates havoc, whether it be against the run, whether it be as a pass rusher on pass rush games and loops. It feels like Spags will really like that type of guy, and it's not going to cost a lot because of his age. So I think this is a deal that Kansas City is probably going to look forward to making, and if they do make it, we're going to look back and be like, oh, that was a really smart deal.
And it's one that, of all these moves, would cost the least. Like a day 3 pick swap. Guy's 34 years old. And as JP said, he really won't have a role here in Cleveland very soon, costing $3.5 million a year. Like, it is almost a no-brainer if a guy like this is available, and it's an opportunity just to bolster that interior of their defensive line. That's been probably one of their weakest points on the roster outside of Chris Jones. Obviously, they just haven't had a guy who, as JP alluded to, can create chaos. So if a guy like this is available, it feels like a no-brainer for a Chiefs or some sort of contender to add a piece to the puzzle.
All right, finally, I want to talk about some corners. And the Saints, they have just one win on the season, and it just looks like it gets from bad to worse, right? So, JP, should they move on from Alontae Taylor?
I think so. It feels like every time we talk about the Saints, somebody's going to get traded. Somebody's going to end up on the trading block. And I feel like Alontae Taylor is going to be that guy on the defensive side of the ball. The dude just causes havoc. We talk about creating chaos. Alontae Taylor is one of the better blitzing nickelbacks in the NFL. He's also going to create plays on the ball. He's going to be a sure tackler. And I think all those things ring well with what Spags wants in his secondary. I think the secondary has actually played a lot better to go in this recent stretch of the win streak they're going through instead of the first part of the season where they really couldn't tackle. So adding another guy like Taylor, it allows you to be versatile with Trent McDuffie. Both guys can play outside in. And I think Spags will love a guy like Taylor who can just create problems as a blitzer.
Yeah, to me, he feels like the kind of guy that the Chiefs signed in free agency, and then all of a sudden he's way better there than he was at his previous stop, because he is a press man corner who, once Dennis Allen left, like, really isn't getting to work the same way he did previously. I think he's very talented, but he is a little boomer bust. And it would give you, as JP alluded to, that pass rushing threat. They haven't really, when they moved Trent McDuffie outside and put Shamari Connor in the slot, you really haven't had that same ability to have that physical presence there from the slot and be able to play man coverage the same way. So it would be a big upgrade in terms of pure coverage ability from Shamari Connor.
All right, and lastly, another one-win team over in Tennessee on the Titans, Roger McCreary. So, JP, how can he help the Chiefs?
I think you're thinking about Roger McCreary the same way you're talking about Alontae Taylor in terms of outside in versatility. You have a guy who's a little bit undersized, but you cannot account for how much dog he has in him. He's such a feisty player at the catch point, and Tennessee is going to be starting to move on from a lot of these guys just to get more picks to help their roster moving forward. So I think McCreary helps out a lot in Kansas City because of what he can do with bringing Trent McDuffie either outside or in. You can play more matchup football, and then he just brings a level of an edge. He brings an edge to this team that I think is going to be really helpful, and it moves Shamari Connor back to dime linebacker, back to safety, where he feels a little bit more comfortable instead of putting him in the slot.
See, I hate this move, but not for the Chiefs. I hate this for the Titans. We can't just rob this entire roster. They have no one. And this is like one of your few guys that you drafted. Second round, 35th overall pick, and it worked out for you. Just re-sign them. Like, you got to have some positive momentum here. You can't just strip this roster of everything. Maybe trade the vets, but this is a guy who's going into he's only in his 4th season. He's going into his 5th season next year. Just re-sign him, take the win, make sure you have some talent on this roster going forward.
Yeah, they need all the help they can get when it comes to talent there over in Tennessee. All right, so we hit 5 players that Kansas City should target at the trade deadline. None of them are on offense, by the way. Don't have a running back in there, where a lot of fans, JP, think that is a need for Kansas City. So you think this offense is set moving forward and then past the deadline if they want to run this thing back and get to a Super Bowl and maybe win it this time?
I think their deadline deal was Rashee Rice. That was their version of a deadline deal. They got their guy back, and I think it helped move the offense a lot more. And with their run game, I understand wanting a running back in this scenario, but I do think the trio of Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and Brashard Smith actually kind of works in this offense. They don't need anybody who really can be like a bell cow in this offense because of how much they throw the ball, but they all fill out certain roles in special ways. And with Brashard Smith continuing to become more of a factor in this offense, you just worry about taking away some reps and some snaps from him as he continues to grow in his role.
Yeah, I'm just looking defense. That's what's going to limit you. That's where they've been kind of up and down this season. Offensively, I don't even want to hand the ball off. Like, the way this passing game is going, we don't need to run the football that much. Patrick Mahomes is his own running game basically at this point. Just make sure teams can't build a big lead that's insurmountable the way we saw in certain games this season.
And that trade deadline coming up shortly, November 4th. Mike, JP, we certainly appreciate it. Talking 5 moves that the Chiefs need to make ahead of that trade deadline. You can hear the gentleman alongside Kyle Long on Pushing the Pile. It's always a fun episode when the Jags win and JP gets to just fan out on the pod. It hasn't happened in 2 weeks, so hopefully, after the bye it'll happen. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.